there was a man named John. To the world, he was a smile, a soft touch, a presence that brought light into rooms clouded with shadows. But behind the smile, behind the quiet patience in his eyes, there lived an ocean of silence. John had spent his entire life giving joy to others, weaving laughter into their broken nights, offering warmth when they had none. And in giving, he forgot what it meant to receive. He forgot what it meant to live for himself. Or perhaps he forced himself to forget, because behind that forgetting, there lived a pain carved into him not by fate, but by the cruel hands of those who called themselves society. Sometimes he would look at himself and wonder, am I nothing more than dead wood? A piece of timber that has no purpose, except to be burned, to offer fire for others, light for others, warmth for others, while turning itself into ashes. And then, in the next moment, when he would hear the sound of laughter sparked by his presence, when he would see eyes glowing because of something he said, he would feel alive again. He would remember, if only faintly, that his existence mattered. For John was no ordinary man. He was a man of heart, and his heart was vast. So vast that it carried only love, only compassion, only tenderness. But the larger the heart, the deeper the wound. And John carried within him a wound sharp as a dagger, a wound from the past that pierced his fragile soul every time he dared to remember. This world has always been full of double standards. A world where smiles are worn like masks, and judgment hides behind false morality. A society that speaks of values, of honor, of tradition, yet uses those very words as chains. Chains to bind those who dare to walk differently. Chains to silence those who dare to listen to the voice of their heart. And John was different. He was not a sheep in their herd. He refused to bow to their rules. He listened to the whispers of his heart, even when they trembled, even when they bled. And one day, that heart spoke louder than fear, louder than shame, louder than the noise of the world. On that day, John chose love. Came softly at first. A glance, a voice, presence. His name was Brahm. Not just a friend, not just a companion, but something more. A soul that mirrored John's own. In Brahm's laughter, John heard music he had never known. In Brahm's eyes, he saw a reflection of his own hidden light. And in Brahm's silence, John felt understood without a single word spoken. The bond between them was not ordinary. It was deeper than words, purer than gold, fiercer than fire. In Brahm's presence, John felt whole. The broken shards of his heart finally found a place to rest. The restless nights, the endless ache, the haunting silence. All of it faded when Brahm was near. Together, they built a world of their own. A small world, fragile yet beautiful, where love was not chained, where hearts were free, where only tenderness reigned. But society never forgives those who refuse to kneel. The moment John embraced Brahm openly, the smiles around him cracked. The masks fell. Those who once praised him, who once laughed with him, revealed themselves as wolves cloaked in sheep's skin. Their whispers turned into poison, spreading like infection among the herd. He has betrayed us. He is against our values. He is a danger to our honor. And so they cast him out. One by one, the doors closed. His family turned away. His neighbors whispered curses. His friends disappeared like shadows at dawn. They stripped him not only of his place, not only of his name, but of his dignity. And then, the cruelest wound of all, they tore him away from Brahm. The love that had healed his soul, the bond that had given him life, was shattered by the hands of the very people he once served with laughter and light. John stood alone. The streets that once welcomed him now echoed with silence. The nights grew heavier, darker, colder. Yet through all the emptiness, one thing survived, the memory of Brahm's smile, the warmth of his touch, the love that no one, no law, no tradition could erase. Every night, John would sit by the window, staring at the moon. He would whisper, as if Brahm could hear him across the distance. They can tear us apart, but they cannot kill what lives inside me. They cannot burn love. They cannot bury it. And yet doubt haunted him. At times he wondered, was I wrong to choose my heart? Was I wrong to love? Am I truly nothing more than dead wood, useful only when burned? But then he would remember Brahms' voice, calm and steady, saying once, "The world may not understand us, John, but love does not need the world's permission. Love is its own reason." Those words became John's anchor, his rebellion, his silent strength. He began to smile again. Not the smile of a man desperate to please others, but the smile of a man who carried fire in his chest. He began to walk the streets again, not as one who belonged to the herd, but as one who dared to walk alone. People still whispered, they still judged, they still condemned. But John was no longer trying to belong. He was no longer trying to fit into the mold they had carved for him. For in losing everything, he had found something far greater. He had found himself. Still, the wound remained. The separation from Brahm was not something he could escape. His heart bled silently every day, and yet, within that bleeding, there lived a strange beauty, a beauty that whispered, "If love could exist once, it can exist again. If my heart could burn once, it can burn forever." And so John lived, between pain and hope, between exile and memory, between loss and love. But deep inside, he knew this was not the end of his story. The world might have pushed him into silence, but silence has its own way of turning into a voice louder than chains, louder than walls, louder than the cruelty of 1,000 masks. The question remained, would John's voice rise again? Would he dare to fight, not just for his love, but for every soul crushed under the weight of false honor? Or would he let the world's fire consume him, leaving nothing but ashes behind? The answer waited in the darkness of his nights. And in that darkness, John's heart beat louder than ever. Weeks turned into months. Months blurred into years. The seasons changed, yet the wound inside remained raw, fresh, bleeding. John learned to mask it with smiles, but behind his eyes, the ache lingered. He would catch himself in the crowd, searching for Brahm's face among strangers. Every shadow, every passing figure, every voice in the distance. His heart hoped, even when reason knew better. Then one evening something shifted. He heard whispers in the marketplace, whispers of another soul, someone else who had been cast out for daring to love against the chains of society. A young woman, scarred by shame, abandoned by her own blood. She had no voice left, no home, no family. And as John listened, something inside him stirred. For the first time, he realized his pain was not his alone. There were others, countless others, silent, exiled, forgotten. And in that moment, John made a choice. He would no longer suffer quietly. His story was not just about him. His wounds, his scars, his loss. They could become a voice for those who had been silenced, a fire for those whose flames had been extinguished. He began to speak. First, it was a whisper, a word shared with a stranger, a story told in hushed tones. But soon it grew. His voice carried into the alleys, into the squares, into the very heart of the society that had cast him out. He told them of his love. He told them of Brahm. He told them of the cruelty hidden behind their false masks of honor. People listened, some with anger, some with fear, but some with tears, because within his story they recognized their own. Of course, the wolves came again. They mocked him, threatened him, tried to silence him once more. But John was no longer afraid, for he had nothing left to lose. They had taken his home, his family, his place in their herd. But they could not take his truth. And truth, once spoken, cannot be buried. Still, in the quiet of night, John's heart longed for Brahm. The memory of his laughter haunted him like a melody half-remembered. Sometimes he wondered, did Brahm survive the exile? Did he still remember? Did he still carry the same flame, hidden, trembling, but alive? One evening, as rain fell in silver sheets from the sky, John stood at the edge of the marketplace, telling his story to those who dared to listen. His voice shook, not with fear, but with the weight of truth. They told me I was nothing, he said. They told me I was only fit to be burned, to be ashes. But even ashes can carry fire. Even ashes can rise with the wind. They can spread and ignite what the world tried so hard to kill. From the crowd, a voice answered. Steady. Familiar. And sometimes, fire finds fire again. John froze. His heart stopped. Slowly he turned. And there, standing among the crowd, soaked in rain, eyes burning with the same light he had carried in memory, was Brahm. For a moment the world disappeared. No whispers, no judgment, no chains. Only two souls, once torn apart, now standing face to face. Tears blurred John's vision. His lips trembled. Brahm! Brahm smiled, though his eyes carried their own scars, their own years of exile. They tried to bury us, John. But love grows even in the dark. In that instant, John understood. This was not just reunion. This was victory. Not the kind society writes in history books, but the kind written in the silence of hearts that refused to surrender. Together, they stood before the crowd. Together, they became a symbol not of shame, not of exile, but of survival, of love unbroken, of truth unshaken. And though the herd still whispered, though the wolves still circled, something had changed. A crack had opened in the walls of their false morality. A seed had been planted. For love, once seen, cannot be unseen. The story of John and Brahm was no longer just their own. It belonged to everyone who had ever been silenced. Everyone who had ever been told they were wrong for listening to their heart. Everyone who had ever been cast out for daring to love. And so, John's question was answered. He was not dead wood. He was fire. He was light. He was proof that love survives even the cruelest storms. As the rain fell around them, as the crowd stood in silence, John whispered to himself, not in despair but in defiance. I exist. I love. And that is enough. If this story touched your heart, if you felt John's journey in your soul, do not let it end here. Stay with us. Subscribe to this channel, because here we tell the stories others are too afraid to speak. Stories of pain, yes, but also of courage, of defiance, of love that refuses to die. Your support keeps these voices alive. So do not just listen. Be part of the fire. Be part of the light. Be part of this journey. Because somewhere, right now, another John is waiting to be heard. And together, we can make sure their story is never silenced again.